Hamas is far from being defeated as a military, entity. It has worn the Israeli Defense Force down to a nub. Most of the tanks that are hit by Hamas aren't destroyed; they're damaged. Those tanks have to be pulled back to a depot where they're repaired. To repair these tanks, you require spare parts. That's just the reality of it. To refurbish, and it's a labor-intensive process. Israel has tank repair depots. Israel has put aside stockpiles of spare parts. Israel has never prepared for a war of this intensity, producing this level of damage for this length of time. Israel has run out of spare parts, and so the tanks that are being damaged by Hezbollah cannot be repaired. Now you've destroyed that tank because if it can't be repaired and brought back in, it's the equivalent of a destruction of a tank. And so in addition to the tanks that have been destroyed, which can't be repaired, tanks that are heavily damaged, now there's no parts to repair them, so they're put aside. And what's happening for the Israelis is that lightly damaged tanks can't be repaired. There's no spare parts. So every time Hezbollah throws a mine or hits a tank with a tandem warhead, RPG, and takes it out of action, it's now the equivalent of a destroyed tank. Now, Israel doesn't have an infinite amount of tanks. And so what they're seeing is the backbone of whatever offensive strike capacity they were looking to project into Hezbollah is gone. You don't want to start a fight with Hezbollah with whatever tank force you have, and within a week have no more tanks. That's a losing proposition. We haven't even gotten into air defense, the Iron Dome, the missiles hitting the Air Force, et cetera, like that. The IDF cannot physically do what Netanyahu wants it to do in Lebanon. And it's not just about projecting power into Lebanon, driving Hezbollah back to the Litani River line. It's about defending Israel, because Hezbollah isn't going to just sit there and get hit by Israel. Hezbollah has said, we're coming after you. Hezbollah will challenge Israel for control of northern Israel. Hezbollah will be fighting the Israelis in every town, every village in northern Israel. Hezbollah will seek to capture the Galilee, to sever the Golan, which means Israel now will not only have to fight the fight in Litani, but they have to fight a rear action fight. Requires military with equipment, equipment they don't have anymore, ammunition they don't have anymore, men who are exhausted. Remember, these men aren't coming into this thing fresh. These are men who have been worn down to enough. Ask yourself, Garland, why the IDF soldiers are sleeping in their tanks. Because they're exhausted. Because their fight for survival inside Gaza is a 24-hour fight. They are always on edge because you never know when the ant is coming out of the anthill. And the ant is going to come running at you with an anti-tank mine and slap it under. And you're there, you're on edge, 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 boom, you're dead. And that's just the reality of it. These soldiers who aren't very good to begin with, I keep picking on the IDF because they deserve to be picked on. They're not very good to begin with. It's a conscript-based military. There's only so much you can do with them. They have an over-reliance on technology. So when you take soldiers who only have a limited window of training and you expose them to high-tech equipment, they begin to believe that the equipment will save them. They aren't doing what you need to do with the tactics, the basics. Get your guys out of the damn tank and create a perimeter around the tank. Patrol, active patrolling. That's not what they're doing. And as a result, their guard is down, and Hamas, who was underground, now emerges into this moonscape, this destruction, this Stalingrad-type urban environment that's been collapsed around where there's no control. I mean, how do you control a collapsed structure? These guys are coming up from in the collapsed structure, finding the scene, and hitting them. There's nothing Israel can do to defend against this. Their military is exhausted. Their men aren't that good. And they're taking casualties. And again, it's the same thing with their manpower. You're not seeing we're seeing a high death count, but it's not an outlandish death count because the technology protects the soldiers. These tanks are getting blown up. You're not killing the entire crew. Very rarely do you barbecue the crew inside. Sometimes they do. We've seen the infantry fighting vehicles get hit. 11 guys inside don't make it out. Bad day to be the IDF. But generally speaking, you get hit and you get concussed. That's sort of a game changer. Spalling takes place. You get holes in your arms get ripped off, legs get ripped off. But you live. They get to evacuate you to a hospital. You ain't coming back in the fight. And this is where the Israelis, they're not telling the truth about the number of wounded they've had. The seriously wounded, people who are irretrievable, meaning they ain't coming back. They're done. That number is huge. It's like the tanks that can't be repaired, the soldiers that can't be repaired, the soldiers that can't come back to the fight. And then there's another aspect to it, because the guys who maybe get concussed, or maybe who don't, but see this stuff, live it, their morale is shot, 100% shot. They are worn out. The PTSD is going to be a perpetual problem for 80% of the IDF that's out there right now. These guys are fundamentally broken, and that's the reality. And this is just because of Hamas. Now let's talk about what Hezbollah has been doing against them, because Hezbollah's been wearing them to a nub up north too. And if they ever go to war with Hezbollah, it's all over. It's all over for the IDF. They'll kill a lot of Hezbollah fighters. There's no doubt about it. The IDF's deadly, but they're not going to win. They're going to lose. It's no longer about the Israelis failing to achieve their objective. Therefore, Hezbollah's victory is defined by simply surviving. The next fight will be Israel will not only fail to achieve it will be physically defeated, destroyed. You will see things that the Israelis have not seen since Suez in 73. Mass surrendering of Israeli forces, mass casualties of Israeli forces, entire units taken off the order of battle. That's the future for Israel if they go to war with Hezbollah. And the IDF commanders know this, so they're now speaking hard truths to the Israeli political leadership. And hopefully the political leadership will listen. Yeah, I mean, that's right now, as bad as things are for Israel, and I believe actually that Israel's been fatally wounded. I don't think Israel survives in the long term, but that's a different discussion. Right now, Israel will be able to manage its demise, meaning that it's not going to be rapid, it's not going to be precipitous, it can be managed, which I think is the preferred way to do it, because that allows for some sort of orderly transformation from the Zionist entity of Israel into maybe initially a two-state option, but Israel can't survive as two-state option, and eventually there will be flight of population. And when Israel gets down to a certain number of people, the basic demographics dictate a one-state solution, where whatever Jewish population decides to remain will be absorbed into a greater Palestinian state where Muslims, Jews and Christians hopefully learn to live in peace and harmony. But the concept of this singular Zionist entity, I believe it's been fatally wounded. But it can be put down. If it goes to war with Hezbollah, it will be put down. Look, Israel's already acknowledged. In 2022, 2023, Israel ran two major exercises. I think the one in 2023 was called Operation Chariots of Fire, where they stress test the IDF on the premise that it was being attacked by everybody at once. And of course, from the IDF's perspective, the main fight was going to be against Hezbollah. That was the existential threat, the number one threat. And they anticipated Iran coming in and helping them. They anticipated Syria maybe making a move on the Golan Heights. They anticipated, the Iraq and Shia militias in Syria and Iraq helping out. What they didn't anticipate was the Houthi shutting down the Red Sea and blockading them successfully. No one anticipated that. But they also didn't anticipate Hamas taking the fight to them. And all the exercises in Hamas was easily contained because they figured that the worst you'd get out of the West Bank and Gaza was intifada type activity that could be contained and minimized, that the main fight would be in the north. And both times they lost that fight. And that was the reality. Even when when the Israelis had everything available to them in the war game, they couldn't defeat it. They couldn't defeat Hezbollah. They try and bring in America, still didn't. You didn't get the defeat. And that's with everything working the way the Israelis want it to work. Right now, Israel is fundamentally broken. They can't defend themselves. Any war with Hezbollah, therefore, Israel would have to go for the quick kill. We've just articulated why Israel can't have a drawn-out war with Hezbollah. They don't have the ability to do it. It will have to be a quick kill. Israel will have to come in with everything it has, overwhelming firepower, in hopes that they break Hezbollah politically and militarily very soon. Hezbollah knows this. So Hezbollah is geared to not just immediately counterpunch, but to preempt any Israeli effort. What's going to happen is you're going to have two sides that recognize that they have to, the side that gets fire superiority over the other side first will win this war. So Israel's job is to come in with its air force predominantly and bomb the living hell out of everything. Israel said they're going to use weapons that have never been used before, of unprecedented power. Who knows what that means? They're going to come in and they're going to be hitting. Hezbollah needs to take the Israeli air bases out of the mix, because as you take an air base out, the airplanes aren't hitting you. So it's going to be this massive fire back and forth, missiles pouring in, everything they got. There will be no holds barred in the initiation of this. And the side that gets the other side to flinch first, to blink, to stop throwing punches and start defending, is the side that's going to win. And the Hezbollah understands that they're at a greater risk if they let the Israelis land the first punch. If they sit there and say, okay, we're going to watch Israel build up and we're going to let them hit the first punch. No matter how well prepared Hezbollah is, that first punch is going to be a big punch. And so Hezbollah has said, if we see you starting to get ready, we're going to hit you first. And the first punch we throw is going to be everything. It's not going to be a jab. It's not going to be dancing around. It is, you're coming in with a haymaker while they're not looking, and you're just trying to take them out with one punch. And that's what Hezbollah, they're going to come in and they're going to take everything out at once and then keep it going until Israel no longer exists. Once they start, they're not stopping until Israel is destroyed. That's the future. And my money's on Hezbollah. My money's not on Israel. Hezbollah has shown that it can collect the intelligence. They know where all these targets are. It's not guesswork. They have the precision missiles to strike. They have the numbers necessary to sustain. Israel won't win this fight. Israel will not only fail to defeat Hezbollah, Israel will be physically destroyed because of this. And I don't just mean their military. I mean Israel. Israel will be occupied. When the fight ends, Hezbollah will control the northern third of Israel. That's my assessment. And as Israel collapses, who knows what other